God is not going to deliver you. He already has. God is not going to deliver you. He already has. Hello, I'm Holt Hanley, and we do daily Bible studies using the Charles Stanley Life Principles Daily Bible, where every day we read 2 chapters of the Old Testament, some Psalms, some Proverbs, little New Testament, and we've got one more month, and we've gone through the entire Bible this year. So excited for that. Also excited because we're going to break our streak of having our verse of the day be from the New Testament, because the Old Testament was just absolute gold. We are in Daniel right now, where it's the classic names Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And the story we're reading about today is a very famous story where they're brought into the furnace and then God delivers them. Spoiler alert. So here's the key verse that popped out to me throughout this reading. It's actually a few verses, but it shouldn't be too complex today, just because, the message here is pretty clear. It says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Amazing. So what is an illustration for this? Well, I think the illustration connects best actually to the mindset of Nebuchadnezzar in this story. So we all can relate with this, where there's things in our life that we try to go to get our sense of control, to get our sense of stability, to feel like we have worth, that the future is sure. Maybe you're one of those obsessive planners where you have to think of every single possible outcome that can happen. And you think if you could just answer all of those questions, if you could just have all the information, then you'll have peace. But you never do, because there's always the next thing to plan for. There's always that next piece of information that you haven't gotten the answer to yet. Maybe you're someone who thinks they're going to get their security through money. And we see this in the world where anytime somebody thinks, okay, I just need money and that's what's going to bring me peace, it's never enough money. There's also the social media aspect. Maybe it's attention we get from others, thinking that maybe that secures our spots in the community. Maybe it boosts our reputation and our image, and that's what's going to bring us safety. So you post things and check the likes obsessively, constantly refreshing your feed, thinking, oh, is the number going up? But the number has never gone up high enough to satisfy what you're truly looking for. We all know that feeling. We all fall short, but there is a place we can go where we can actually find security, where we can actually find peace. Before we get into that, though, what are just some questions that popped up while reading? This story is pretty straightforward. All of Daniel so far has been. I think it's going to get a bit more confusing tomorrow, but it's just a narrative. It's enjoyable to read, and there weren't too many questions. I think the only one that really popped up for me is this part where Nebuchadnezzar has said a number of things to them. I'll give the context in a second. But then they say, we have no need to answer you in this matter. And then they proceed to answer him. So I was a little confused. I'm like, why did they say they're not going to answer him? And then they do answer him. So yeah, we'll get into that in the explanation. But first, the fallen condition, because this is something I actually missed when I first read the passage, but that's why it's always important to try to figure out, okay, what does this passage show us about our sin, about our weakness, about where we fall short, about our brokenness? And then what is the passage saying is the answer to that problem that is in every one of us? Because it's easy for us to read the story and think, oh, Nebuchadnezzar, what an insecure king. But we are Nebuchadnezzar. So in this reading, this doesn't exactly give the full context of the story, but Nebuchadnezzar has just learned that his kingdom is going to fall. So he goes into defense mode, and he wants absolute control. So he makes this golden image that he wants everybody to bow down to. And when you're first reading it, maybe that's a question that pops up. You think, okay, why does he care so much if people bow down to this image or not? but it's how he's showing that everyone is not necessarily glorifying this image, but are in submission to him. Because he says, if you don't do it, I'm going to throw you in the furnace. So when everyone does it, it makes him feel safe. It makes him feel like he's in control. But that's why he gets so angry at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, because they won't bow down. They won't bow down because that's not their king. Or Nebuchadnezzar is their king, but that image is not their God. So they say they're not going to. That shatters this little world that Nebuchadnezzar was trying to create, that robbed him of the control and stability that he was trying to manufacture. And because of that, he wants to throw them in the furnace, which is his threat, because they're attacking his sense of stability. So if we go into this, they say, we have no need to answer you in this matter. The reason they say that is because he has basically laid it out to them. He says, if you bow down to the idol, good. If you don't bow down, you're going to get thrown in the furnace. And that's something you should be afraid of, because what God could deliver you from that? So when they're saying we have no need to answer you in this matter, what they're saying is, look, you've given us this choice, but the choice doesn't even matter to us because we trust in God. Why do they trust in God? Well, there's 3 things they say. They say the God whom they serve is able to deliver us. He will deliver us, but if not. It's like that classic Mercy Me song. It's even if he doesn't, my hope is in you alone. So they say our God is able to deliver us from the furnace. He will deliver us, but even if he doesn't, we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. That is obedience like we've never seen it before. Although we actually have seen it before. And that's the Christ connection. Because, we'll maybe wrap up the story first. They do end up going into the furnace. So the first part of the Christ connection is that Christ is actually in the furnace with them. When they're looking in there, they're like, oh wait, there was 3 guys, but now there's 4 guys. And one of them looks like the Son of God. And then they come out and Nebuchadnezzar realizes, oh, this God is like no other God. And he actually does a full 180. He says, if anyone says anything against this God, you're going to be torn to pieces. He sounds like an interesting guy. But Christ is in the furnace with them. He does deliver them. So that's the first Christ connection. But what this story is really pointing to is Jesus Christ himself. Because just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, look, God's going to deliver us, but even if he doesn't, we are still going to obey. That's the same thing that Christ did when he went to the cross. He says, I know what's going to happen. This is going to be the worst thing that any human being has ever suffered, not just because of the physical aspect of it, him being scourged, him being humiliated, tortured, crucified, but the fact that he's taking the sin of the world on his shoulders, and for the first time in his life, that sin is going to separate him from God, at least the human aspect. You can't separate the divine aspect, but we're not going to get into that. And it's that Christ taking the entire wrath of God on himself. That is something that none of us would be able to bear. That is the ultimate furnace. And Christ willingly walked into it so that we could be delivered from sin and death. Because when Christ dies on the cross, he pays the punishment that our sin deserves. So if we put our faith in him, we're united to him, and our sin is forgiven. We are no longer slaves to sin and death. We've been set free because Christ fulfilled the law. So you might think, okay, that's nice, but how do we actually take hold of that? How do we apply that to our lives? Well, it's actually the next part of the Christ connection. If you think about the fact that Christ has already delivered you because of what he did on the cross, then there is no furnace that we need to be afraid of anymore. We also don't need to be like Nebuchadnezzar, looking to our planning or our money or our fame in order to get that sense of control, because we don't need control. We understand that God is in control, and he not only is going to deliver us, he already has delivered us on the cross. So our future is secure. Like Nebuchadnezzar stressing out because, oh no, my kingdom's going to fall. What am I going to do? I have to do everything. And there's never enough we can do in our own power. But that's the gospel. It's Christ did it for us. And if we put our faith in him, we're secure. We're good. There is nothing that can take us away from God, because it's God who brought us to him. It's God who's holding on to us, and he's not going to let go. So we can hold fast to that. And that should give us the confidence in order to obey God no matter what he has planned for us. Because we know that whatever happens in this life is only for a little while, and ultimately we know where our future stands. We're not in a kingdom that's going to fall apart. We're in a kingdom that's going to last forever. So what does this say about God's character? Well, I'd say more than anything, it shows how powerful he is. Because this Nebuchadnezzar character is the most powerful man in the world. Babylon is a huge empire. They are the top dog at this point in time. He is the king. And if anybody could have found their safety and security from what this world has to offer, it would have been him. But the fact that he doesn't find it just shows that there is nothing in this world that is going to satisfy that hole in our heart. It can only be found by God. But what a place to place our trust, because this story shows us how powerful he is. He takes 3, I don't know if we'd call them boys or men at this point, who go into a furnace that is 7 times hotter than it should be, that already burnt up some of the guards that threw them into the furnace. They're bound up, and he delivers them out of that certain death, just the same way that he has delivered us out of death as well. So what is the main idea? Well, I kind of just gave it away. God is not going to deliver you. He already has. In Jesus' name, amen.